Yeah, that slipped actually. I need to be careful about that. Okay, okay.
But
Now you
before,
can.
yeah, but after it's fine. Before, how would we say it? Don't mess with cats. So before,
Yes,
during this 25 minutes, don't mess with cats.
sure.
Okay,
That's
so
the rule.
just so we can use it on the IBM Facebook. So
So we are already at 10. So 10 plus 25 is going to be 35. And then we'll need to switch again.
okay,
So I'm keeping an eye on the clock. We'll get a notification. I'll let you know.
excellent. Well, and we should be able to get in the majority of it that we're going to use, and then we can use it what I call the after party.
Sure,
That'll
sure,
work.
sure.
So,
Okay.
all right. So folks, I am here with one of my favorite guys. Don't tell him I said that. Hopefully he can't hear me. Oh, he can hear me. All right. He's one of my favorite magicians, one of my favorite humans, and it's a shame that I don't get to see him more often. We met years ago, I believe, at the 4F convention, and we've actually done a lecture tour together. We have completely opposite styles. We do completely different magic, but he blows my mind every time I'm around him. He's an amazing mentalist, and now he's become a minimalist. So he's going to talk about that. So his background isn't even real; it's magic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Vincent Hedan to the program. Welcome to
Hello,
Something Up
hello.
My Sleeve. Vincent, first of all, where are you?
So right now I'm in Kuala Lumpur, if I'm pronouncing this properly. That's
I
the
don't
capital
know.
of Malaysia.
Oh, you're in
Kuala
Malaysia.
Lumpur. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been here for 2 months and I'm leaving in 2 days.
And what have you been doing there?
So this is part of a first cycle of travel that I started in August. So in August 2022, I left France. I used to live in Paris for 10 years. And for various reasons that we can discuss later, I got fed up with everything and I decided I want to see more. And so I left everything with just 2 bags, 2 backpacks. But I'm not, how to say, I'm not a jungle guy, so I didn't go into the wilderness to lose myself. I like cities, I like connectivity, I like to be connected to the world. So I decided to visit big cities in Southeast Asia, mostly because that's where I studied originally. And I'm trying to find a new home, basically. So I've been doing one country per month since August. And I loved some locations and I hated some others. And so Kuala Lumpur is the last one on my list. I'm taking holidays in Japan for 3 weeks in 2 days, and then I need to find a new home, like a more permanent base, because I've been traveling a lot.
I definitely cannot see you as a jungle guy, whatever
No,
that means,
look at
or
the sun.
whatever our
It doesn't
vision.
work in the jungle.
But I figured that's when I'll know that things have really gotten bad is if you show up at my doorstep and you have a full beard and you've been like wandering through the
And
jungle
dreadlocks
surviving.
and
If that's you, then I'll know like, okay, things have gotten real. It's time to focus because like it's the apocalypse. Like that's why
it's an invitation.
I wasn't concerned about COVID. I was like, it's fine. We're gonna be fine because Vincent Hedan doesn't have a full beard yet. So I figured like this is not the actual apocalypse. We're gonna be okay.
But
Yeah.
actually, COVID played a big part in that. Most countries now I've been talking to told me it was the same situation everywhere, like a lockdown for a few months or a few weeks, depending on the countries. And in France, we had a lockdown for 2 months. And it really made a lot of people, not just me, realize what was your situation. Because when you're locked in your place for 2 months and you can legally not leave your place for anything, it was not like China with guns everywhere, but still in France was pretty serious. You start to think, wait, am I happy where I'm living? Is the space around me good for me? Is the city I'm in, when I'm going to go out, am I happy to go out again? Or is it going to be a chaos when I go out? And that's also when I realized I was basically what they call location independent. Like the work that I do, which is mostly creating, translating, and distributing my work, I don't need to be anywhere because during lockdown, I was locked down and my activity was still, unlike live performers, thriving. So I realized, wait, I'm in Paris paying an awful rent, locked in an apartment. I could be anywhere. I could be Tokyo. I could be in Berlin. I could be anywhere. So let's do that. Let's be anywhere else than home.
That's interesting. That's a very interesting way to put it. I think it had that effect on many people and both negative and positive. Some people went stir crazy. Some people realized they
Yeah.
don't like where they are, and then some people like me realized, hey, I can be happy just staying home with my cats.
Yeah. I mean, it's been hard. You and I are weird cases because we don't have like a real day job, a respectable day job. But most people,
I think
France, at least, I don't
my
know how it
sister
works.
will admire how you put that. I wish she was here to hear you say that. I don't have a
She would agree. She would agree.
respectable day job. Yes, exactly.
But for a lot of people, at least in France, I don't know about the US, it was really hard to bring people back to the office because they realized, wait, I can be productive at home. I don't need to do the commute. I don't need to talk to Steve at the water cooler. I don't need to do all that. I can just be home and
Forget
happier anyway.
Steve.
For
Nobody
some
wants to
people.
talk to Steve. And people, the fact of the matter, Steve, we don't even like you. So yeah, you can go hang out at the water cooler by yourself. It did change things and kind of opened opportunities, and at the same time, it made people realize that there's a lot of expenses that they don't need. There's a lot of
That too, yes.
time wasters we don't need. It showed us how to connect in different ways. Do you think that we've sort of gotten a little spoiled in that sense of the fact that we're now like, in other words, now people are people having Zoom meetings when they should be having actual meetings? Like, are we taking advantage of that?
I will always prefer seeing you in a bar in Paris or in a bar in New Orleans, like we did when we actually met, over this.
Sure.
Because there is a rhythm element, a chemistry that's very important for anything, for my family, for my friends, for my colleagues. But at the same time, like you said, it was an opportunity for a lot of people because I started seeing you, for example, broadcasting on Twitch video games. VR. I saw you doing Beat Saber.
Yep.
I saw people creating amazingly ingenious shows on Zoom. I'm not talking about just doing magic for the camera that doesn't work, but actually thinking about the medium and coming up with great solutions for that tool. And if you didn't have the apocalypse, then nobody would have come up with these solutions. And I have a few friends who still keep 50% of their work as Zoom performance because it's more convenient. They can be anywhere in the world. You don't need to be how do we say in English? When they make you take a plane to go somewhere, you can just stay at home.
Oh,
pants, just
commuting
do the magic to the camera. Yeah.
Commuting. Oh, that's actually one of the questions there's two questions that I completely forgot that I usually start with that I need to ask you. And one is, are you wearing pants?
I am wearing pants actually because you never know.
Okay, I'm not, as per your request. So I'm not, but you can't tell. But I have my
exactly.
I am wearing the tie you like with Bugs Bunny. I remember I wore this. You liked my tie a long time ago when I had this. I think it was in New York, or maybe you were just being
people
nice.
Should know that because they're just looking at two guys talking like it's never been a long time separating us. But first of all, for you, it's what, 8 a.m. in New Orleans, and for me in Kuala Lumpur, it's 9 p.m. So there are 13 hours difference. That's crazy enough.
Right.
But also, we haven't met in 5 years, 6 years. I think last time I was in the US was 2016.
2016, and
4F.
That was the last time we were there. It wasn't the last time you were here. Wasn't when you came to New Orleans then, because that was around the same.
It was before that.
It was okay.
Because if I remember correctly, you and I did our first year at 4F the same year in 2011.
And that's where we met, right? We did some other conventions together, but I was trying to remember. I believe, so 2011 is when we met.
That's the first time, at 4F. And then we did 2012 because that was our second year. And I think I did a third one with you. And then we went to Canada together. That's where we did a small lecture tour.
Which included New York,
because Long Island.
We were in Times Square together. So that was that the lecture tour? Okay, so I was trying to remember.
New Orleans, that's why I visited your home. Beautiful home, by the way.
Well, now I'm in a different place.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I've moved twice since then, but I was in that house for 15 years. It has been kind of a nice change of pace because you know how crazy the French Quarter. Well, you know firsthand how crazy the French Quarter is.
Well, I had one night there, and I was left wanting more, but it was an amazing time. Yes.
But at the same time, so you've already visited here, and you didn't decide that this would be your new home. So, of the countries and cities you visited,
actually, New Orleans with Chicago and New York is possibly on my top 3 of American cities.
Oh, awesome.
From that one experience, thanks to you, if I had to go back to the US, and I was supposed to go in 2020, just before COVID hit, I was booked to lecture at Tannen and to go see Marc de Souza in Philadelphia and do another couple of dates. And I thought I should go to New Orleans because it was great. But then COVID happened, and now it's 5 years later.
Well, I wish you were going to be attending. We go to 4F in almost less than 2 weeks actually. I wish
Yeah, yeah.
you were going to be there. You
I
definitely
had a
would be
couple of
missed.
guys messaging me, say, are you gonna come? Are you gonna come? I said, I'm sorry, I'm sort of stuck on my cycle in Southeast Asia. So
Yeah, it's pretty far, but you're in the future, so it's good because you can tell us what's going to happen.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
that and you're a mentalist, so you should already know what's going to happen. In fact, you probably know what question I'm about to ask. But what is
I'm ready.
what is something up your sleeve?
Well, I have no sleeves because it's way too hot in here. So no sleeves for me. I have the air condition on because it's like 35 degrees Celsius. I don't know for the US because you tend not to use science to calculate things. So I don't know what system you use.
One day
But in
we're gonna
Fahrenheit, I don't
learn.
know.
We will learn to use science. It's gonna take a while. We're evolving, but but eventually we'll learn to use science. No, metaphorically speaking, what is something up your sleeve?
So I've been working for the last few months on a release that was last month for Pi Day. You might know Pi Day, no? So pi, not the pie that you eat, but the pi, the number that's infinite. You know, the symbol, right? Pi,
Right.
that symbol that you learn at school. So I released a few weeks ago an upgraded version of an effect that I've been performing for 10 years.
Well,
So that's
I have the pie the book, the original one.
the old one. Okay, okay.
And I've never performed it because I needed to get the I needed to talk to you more about it. I've
Sure.
always loved that idea, and well, you know how I am. I need to fit it to my personality before I'm going to use
Yes.
it, and I needed to figure out a way that I would do it and make it my own presentation. But I
Yeah, that's
was
what you
gonna.
mentioned in the intro when you said we don't do the same magic. We have very different personalities, styles, history, hair color, anything. So it's very, very different. And but what I like about you and David Stone and a lot of guys at 4F that are in the same vein for me as a spectator anyway, is that I can appreciate what you do despite not wanting to copy what you do. Because I see some performers and I love them and I want to emulate what I see because I love their style and it's very close to me. But with you, nothing that I see you do, I can see myself copy paste instantly, which should never be the way anyway.
Sure.
But I can still appreciate the work that you do and David and others that are so different from me.
You
I still
appreciate
love
my
what you do.
sponge balls?
Well, the SpongeBob, we had a discussion about this,
Yes.
but it's your personality and your interaction with the audience that I love. And you had an amazing idea with the how do you say in English, the invisible deck or the brainwave deck that you
Yes.
performed in your lecture. I love this. It was so clever, so devious.
And actually, that's what I sent off to fool us. Well, another version. Actually, you saw one version of it. I have different routines using that idea and principle, and that idea is uh, a version of that routine is what I sent off. That waiting to hear, fingers cross your thumb tips,
Mm-hmm.
waiting to see what they say about it. But I think the only thing working against me is that it is still a card trick, even though the presentation is like it's not a card trick because it's imaginary. But
You have a policy against card tricks, or
no, just that there's so many that they see a lot of them.
all
So
right,
I think
you want to stand out, so you would prefer
yeah,
another prop.
there's a
Yeah, yeah.
better shot. In fact, I was going to suggest, I don't know if you have any intention of trying for that, but there's 3 routines that you do as we were discussing what we've seen each other do that we would like to use, even though I hadn't figured out how. The 3 things that I've seen you do that I would like to use, and one of them I think would be fantastic if you submitted to Fool Us, is the wine. So pie, the haiku, and the wine tasting are the 3 effects that I learned from you that I would love to somehow figure out how to apply to my act, because I just feel those effects are brilliant. They're not only mind blowers, but they can be so entertaining and so captivating, and they're not card tricks.
Right. I mean, pi is a card trick in disguise, but yes. So pi is a bit
Yeah, wait,
weird for
how is
Fool
that
Us.
a card trick in disguise? That's interesting.
Well, let me illustrate that very quickly.
Okay.
So when I performed the effect at 4F, actually, you saw me performing it with Christian Englob,
Yeah.
who's kind enough to be the spectator for that. Without revealing too much of the method, basically what I'm doing is not, of course, memorizing pi. I'm sorry I can't perform it for you on camera because it's an effect a lot of what I do is either language based or interaction based, and we are sort of stuck in this format here. If you had the book with you, I could actually perform it blind through the camera.
Oh,
But
well,
that's not
heck,
the case.
I do. Well, I do have the book. I just would need to find
But I
it.
need you to have my book.
Ah,
That's
yeah.
very,
Okay.
because each book is very specific. So for people at home watching, the summary of the effect is you have a book, and as you can see on the screen, and you say that you have been working on memorizing the decimals of pi, and if you don't remember, pi is 3.1415, and so on and so on, and it goes on forever. It's infinite, which is all I'm about to say is completely real, which is insane. And so pi is infinite and also non-repetitive. Because if I tell you
Wait, I'm sorry.
divide
What was the
1
last
by
the last thing you said?
non-repetitive,
Non what?
non-repetitive, but I explain what it means because it's a technical term.
One
So
more
if I
time.
ask you to do
I didn't catch that word. Non. I'm just. You got me.
repetitive.
I got
It
you.
took me a while. It took me a while. So what's happening is if I ask you to do 1 divided by 3, it would go 0.33333. So it's infinite, but it's also repetitive. So it's not very interesting. But pi is infinite and non-repetitive, which means if this is true, I mean, they are still figuring this out, you can find any sequence of digits in pi. You can find your birthday, your credit card number, you can find an infinite amount of data, basically.
You could find
And so I
a
love this idea.
Shakespearean. You could find an entire script on written
Yes.
out. Yeah, in
Part
digits.
of the original pattern that I was using for the demonstration, but I don't use it anymore, is to say that, yeah, if you convert every digit into a letter by some code of some kind, you would find Shakespeare, modifications of Shakespeare, anything you want, all the lyrics to Cardi B, I mean, anything you want to find in pi, you would find. And so this idea is interesting. And so that's why some people actually do competitions where they try to memorize as many digits as they can. And I'm not as good as the record holder. The record holder is a Japanese guy, Akira Haraguchi. And in 2006, he was able to recite 100,000 decimals of pi from memory. It took him 16 hours. You can find a portion of the video online if you want.
Jeez.
And so I'm not that good. I only know 17,000 decimals of pi, so a small portion of that. And so in the effect, I need to stop here because now I need a spectator. I would ask the spectator to go to any page. He would give me the page number, and I would tell him what's the beginning of that page, the digits of that page. And then he would go anywhere else. And he would give me a string of 5 digits from anywhere. I don't need to see. I can be blind. I can be on any other room. And I would pick up from there and keep reciting from his spot until the end of the book if he wants. And at the end, I ask him his birthday, and I'm able to tell him the page, the line, and the position on the line where you can find the birthday. So that's the routine that I've been doing for 10 years. And going back to what you were saying about Fool Us, I would prefer to be the first one to perform it at Fool Us, of course. But you have a small problem with pi. It's already been performed in front of pen. Because a guy bought the effect from me, like a random customer on my website. I didn't know about this. And then the video popped up. E3, which is a huge video game convention in the US, actually,
Yeah.
Every year, every 2 years. And at E3, there is a guy who is the director of a very big video game company whose name I forgot, Blizzard, I think.
Oh,
He performed pi
yeah.
on stage with pen next to him, and he
Oh.
fooled pen with the effect.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, so now this is a dud. I can't use that in front of pen because he will certainly recognize that from that experience.
Well, what about the? Well, I want to come back to pi, but what about
Sure.
have you considered submitting for the show?
So I'm extremely picky, and it's not serving me well.
Sure.
I've been in France approached by a few shows, like we have France Got Talent and the equivalent that you have, the X Factor and stuff like this. But every time they approach me, they say, "Oh, we need 2 minutes 3 times because you'll go on stage 3 times if you pass to the next level." And 2 minutes for me, as you just saw when I did the introduction to pi, is the opening pattern.
Sure.
So I'm such a slow burn that I need these 2 minutes just to say hello, which is a big problem. So that's one reason I never went on these shows. There is some financial issues also with the way they treat people after, They consider that the exposure is so big that basically they take all your money after for like 1 year or 2 years, which is stealing you basically. And so for Fool Us, the one issue I have, and again, I'm very picky and I'm wrong, is the entire show, it's in the title, is based on the idea of fooling people.
Sure.
And I don't care about that. I fool people, but my goal is to entertain and to move. And so to go on a show whose mission is to fool two guys,
Yeah.
and they do it in a very elegant way, and the setup is beautiful, and they are very sensitive, brilliant two guys, and of course, Thompson was before the voice in the sky was great. So I have nothing against the team. It's just the starting point to me feels, once again, we are talking about magic as just something that fools.
I completely agree, and that's actually what kept me for a few years from submitting as well. I felt the exact same way. It wasn't until I was physically there watching, because I went as Ed Ripley's advisor when he did the Money Machine for Fool Us, and he brought me along. And when I was backstage and I saw how everything worked, and I had so much respect for the way that they protect the art of magic and uplift the art of magic that I said, okay, I want to be involved with this, but at the same time, I know I could have gone years ago and just done something really funny and great and have some great footage, and that's probably what I should have done to get the exposure.
And Boris went and had a great time. Francis Menotti went and did something great. We know a lot of our friends, John Allen, went there and had a great time.
And I could have done that, but at the same time, I want to play the game. I want to play the game, and I'm not going to feel good about it unless I do try to play the game. I want them to know that I at least tried to play the game, and the game is to try to fool them. The game is that you are taking your entertainment and presenting it as a puzzle. Which is opposite of, I agree, opposite of what we really are trying to accomplish. So, and that's why I've tried to structure for so long something specifically for that show, so that I could play the game.
And to be fair, because I don't want to sound very pretentious, I tend to be like that, is we saw also a few performances on that show that were purely artistic, that almost from the get-go were saying, I don't care about fooling you guys, I'm just going to show you my art. And they were beautiful performances, and they got recognized for that. And it's still exposure, and it's still a video on YouTube, and something that you can show your potential customers, clients.
Yeah.
So there is definitely a place for that. But that show and the other one we had in Vegas, what was the name? Wizard Wars, something like this.
Oh yeah, I'd love that. I wish it was still going. Wizard
Somehow
Wars.
They contacted me out of I don't know where, because I'm in France, they are in Vegas. That's completely crazy, and again, it was about showing the creation process. And I don't watch movies if I saw the making of before. I'd rather see the movie first. So again, I know it's difficult to market magic on TV, but I'd rather have a show like Le Plus Grand Cabaret du Monde, which Ruben Morland, who accompanied us in New York, did with his Matrix with the Rubik's Cube. And that's a show that's about putting artists on stage, and you shut up, you just watch the show, and then they go away, and that they did what they do best, which is entertain you. But again,
I didn't realize that Ruben had been on Le Grand Cabaret du Monde.
He did a performance. He was with me in Paris when he did that, and I didn't get to see him do it, but I saw the act on TV after. It was really nice.
And Ruben was with us, with you and I, when we were in New York.
Because he guided us through Tannins, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, okay, that was the same. See, I remembered being with Ruben in New York, and I remember being with you in New York, and I didn't remember that was at the same. Wow, what a crazy adventure to have those three guys together. That's how wild.
Different.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Just so you know, we are 7 minutes away from being notified again that I'm poor and I don't own the professional version of Zoom. So
at least you own a version of Zoom. I own the stupid version of Zoom where I couldn't even figure out how to start it. So I had to ask my guest. I'm interviewing Vincent, and I had to get Vincent to start the Zoom call for me. I'm like, I can't figure this out. Can you just? I've joined. I know how to click. I can click join. Can you just start it so I can just join? And he's like, yeah, okay, I got you.
There's the French guy in the third world that's actually starting the session.
Yes, brilliant. And by the way, I wanted to say, don't worry about you sounding pretentious. because with your French accent, you always sound pretentious. So don't worry about that. That's not, it's no big deal. So all right, well then let's come back to, we'll probably cover this and then we can change over. But I want to come
Sure.
back to I see pi as a
Mm.
brilliant, unique version of a book test, of
Mhm.
something that taking a book test to another level, where it's like it's a book test that doesn't look like a book test. But you said specifically it's like it's like disguising a card trick, and I'm
Yes,
still trying to figure
we
out
lost
what that
that
means.
track, and thank you for bringing me back on track. So you're right. It's a variation on the book test. It's technically a memory test because you don't divine or guess what's happening in the book, although you technically could. Um, so it's a memory demonstration. And of course, for this to work in the book, I cannot have the real decimals of pi, because if I had found a way to do this effect with the real decimals of pi, I would have the Nobel Prize, which is the Fields Medal in mathematics, for some very funny reason that we can discuss later.
Well, see,
Um,
I own the effect. I bought it from you, and I still don't know all this because I still don't know how to
well,
do it.
what's confusing though is there are about 40 different versions of this effect, method-wise, I mean. So the book will always look the same. The effect will always be the same. It's just you might be using a double facer while I'm using a short card, the equivalent of that if it was a card trick. So in my version, the version that I use, that's called the stack version, you know a stack. So for those who don't know at home, a stack is a memorized deck. You know the position of 52 cards in the deck in sequence, and you also know the numerical position of every card in the deck. That's the base of that. In the US, the Aronson stack is very popular. Another friend from 4F, Tamaris, invented the Mnemonica stack, which is arguably one of the best stack ever. I use my own stack because I created it almost 20 years ago, but that's irrelevant. So in the book, what's happening is the first page is really pi, because you can encounter some crazy people who actually know 10, 20, 30, 40 digits of pi. So for these, the first page is a decoy. But after the first page, all the numbers that you see are actually cards minus the suit. So when I'm reciting pi in front of you or doing whatever I'm doing with pi, I'm just navigating my stack in my head. And
Oh,
if you know your stack, it's like your ABC. I'm not thinking. I know what's a card, what's the next one, what's the next one, what's the card, 10 cards next to that, and so on. So that's the base for the first two phases when you recite from the beginning of the page and then from anywhere on the page. For the birthday, you need to do some small calculation to get the line, the page, and the position on the line. The calculation has been simplified in this new version so much that if you graduated from kindergarten, you can do it. It's achievable. So it's very, very simple.
that's a
So
hope
that's
for
why it's a card trick in
me
the
then. Hope for me then. And well, actually, we've had discussions about stacks before, because like you found it crazy that I don't use one, but then I would point out that I so quickly change the order of the cards. However, I know so many false shuffles, I don't have to. I don't have to change the order. And I've thought for a while that I should be using one, and there's a lot of kind of memorization tricks I want to do. But you use your own. You're not using
Yes.
one of the versions that most people are familiar with.
It was an accident, and I don't recommend it. I'm very happy, but I have a blog article on my website. The link is on my head, and I discussed that because a lot of people like you and others, they come to me or they come to friends and they say, I want to do a stack, but which one? How do I memorize it? And so on and so on. And the answer is, first, you need to start, because you should start sooner than later. Because if you take 10 years choosing a stack, you're losing 10 years of usage. So it's a bit stupid. But people don't really, people need to choose a stack that has a lot of content in terms of effects. Because again, I'm only concerned about the experience of the spectator, not the ease of use for the magician. So if you take Mnemonica, if you take Aronson, you know you'll have dozens, hundreds of routines from Aronson, Tamaris, and others, because they've been working on this for decades. At the time where I created my stack, I wanted a very specific effect that none of these stacks that existed before me did. So I had to create my own tool, like I usually do for the book test and anything else. And so I created my own stack just for this effect. And then I applied the same work as Aronson and Tamaris on it to some extent to find usage out of my order.
Do you also know the Arison stack though?
I used to.
Used to,
Because
okay.
at some point I was interested in, it's like when you study languages, you think, what would happen if I knew 2 languages or 3 or 4 or 5? As a linguist, it's an interesting question. So as a stack guy, I thought, what if I knew 2 stacks perfectly? Would I come up with a routine? Because sometimes you need to master the tools to get the ideas. So you need to suffer first and then get the reward maybe after. And so in my head, I was like, okay, I'm going to learn Mnemonica because it's a great stack. And then on top of that, I learned Aronson. So for about 2 months, I had 3 stacks stacked one on top of each other. And what's interesting is it's like a language. I speak English to you, no French is going in my head. But if I speak in French, no English is going through my head. And when I was studying Korean or Indonesian, I was in Jakarta 2 months ago. When you're on one track, you don't deviate. So when I'm in Mnemonica, when I was in Mnemonica, I didn't confuse it for mine or for Aronson's. It's a very weird compartment thing in the brain, at least for me, that you don't get lost. But the problem is there is no interesting ideas. Less than a minute. So should we switch?
Yeah, let's do that. So basically, you're going to hang up and then you're going to send me a new link. Is that what it is?
Or maybe I can invite you from within the interface. Let's try. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. That's not on you. That's on me.
Oh.
Oh, I see. So now, okay, let me take that out. Let me remove that. There we go. I was like, what is he showing? That was my screen. So now, so yeah, so he's going to send me a new link to reconnect. So yeah, we're reconnecting on Zoom. Now, he keeps talking about the poor man's Zoom. Well, I actually ended up having to, there it is. I had to, I pay for now the not so poor man's StreamYard so that I can actually broadcast to different platforms and all. And I may end up having to do a more sophisticated Zoom. I guess I should first learn how to even use Zoom, since I couldn't figure it out on my own. Okay, so join and then I'll bring him back in. Beautiful. Okay, almost there. There we go. All right. So, and join with our, okay. So you're there now. I think when I bring you back, let's just confirm. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Corinne, you're still there. Can you confirm that we can still hear him? I may need to redo that again as well. I don't know if it keeps the audio clicked or if I needed to re-click it. So are we getting, oh, I can see from here too. Go ahead and say a few stupid things.
Well, like just I did before, the exact same stuff.
Go ahead and say a few stupid things. Well, like just oh, yeah, it's working. Okay, good. Beautiful. Okay, so we talked about pi. And the reason I asked, do you have an intention of doing the show, is because if you don't, I started realizing, oh, that could be an opportunity for you to be my mentor. And maybe that's my secret to not doing a card trick, is to incorporate one of your routines. 2 of the routines that I love are, besides pi, are haiku and the wine. So I had wanted to ask you about both of those. Which would you like to discuss first? It's a little early for wine, I guess. Oh, not for you. It is for me.
Well, for me, it's right on target.
Okay.
But yeah, the wine stuff was, we'll probably go back to this a few times during the discussion, but my main source of inspiration for the last 10 or 20 years has been movies. I'm a huge movie fan. And I saw this movie, I don't have an image for that, but it's called Se souvenir des belles choses, to remember beautiful things, such a French title. And so it's about a guy who had a car accident, and he used to be a wine expert, enologue, I think you say. There is like a technical term for that, but I forgot. And so because of the car accident, he lost his ability to be that good at recognizing wine. So he has to train again. And there is this scene in the movie where he's using I think it's called a Lady Susan. It's like a rotating plate that you put on.
Lazy Susan, yeah.
Lazy Susan, sorry. I learned that when I was in the US, and I don't know how to say this prop. So Lazy Susan.
Yeah, lazy because you're not, it's coming to you, you're not moving, you're turning
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has
I
three
don't know why
glasses
it's
and three
Susan though.
wines.
I have no idea why it's a Susan and not
Why
Karen.
was it Steve at the water cooler before? We never know.
Oh, because everybody hates Steve.
Call back, call back.
Why was it Steve? Steve, he's
But
still
so,
there. Steve was asking about you. He's like, how come Vincent never comes to the
but
water
I'm
cooler
not coming
anymore?
back.
Yeah.
I love the lockdown, so I'm not coming down.
See you,
coming
Steve.
But so the scene in the movie is like a magic trick, like a magic demonstration without the method, of course, because it's movie. So he's mixing glasses and wines and trying to pair the wine in the glass with the wine in the bottle just by tasting each of them. And he's also blind. He has an actual blindfold for this, so he doesn't see the labels on the bottle. And at the time, a long time ago, I didn't drink anything. So for me, as a wine muggle, it looked like magic, because how can you? I can make the difference between orange juice and water, of course, but between different wines, it seemed very specific. And so I came up with a routine where you can ask people to write down wines on paper, put it like as in a paper bowl, like a crumbled paper bowl, into a glass. You have three glasses like this, and you taste. I think I have an image for that because that's what I did at Penguin. I'll put it up on the screen in a minute. And I taste the paper bowl, and I can tell, oh, this is the white wine, this is the red wine, or this is the Chardonnay, this is the Merlot, the Pinot Noir, and so on and so on. And then at the end, I actually guess what the last guest is thinking of, just so people understand what's the routine that we're talking about. And the method for this is, we won't discuss this on video.
No,
but,
sure, yeah.
You know what it is.
Well, because I've seen several of your lectures. Well, and fantastic, but also we talked about. I don't know if you remember. We talked about different methods.
You gave me a great idea for the routine. Again, very different style, but you gave me a brilliant idea to use in the routine.
And because I guess because in my mind I was thinking, okay, well, how would I do it without the method that you were using at the time? And B, how do I apply it to, if I wanted to use that routine, what would feel comfortable for me and my personality and my act? And so I think since then, actually, I've actually thought a lot about that, just because I love that routine. I love that idea. And I love the fact that it seems like a perfect sort of impromptu living room type when you're at somebody's house. Like, I don't like pulling out a deck of cards. Like, why'd you bring cards? Were you decided you were prepared to entertain us? Like I like situations where you can just grab something off the table and entertain somebody. And being at a dinner party and having 3 wine glasses and doing something like that,
the setting is perfect.
Just seems that that's a mind-blowing situation. And so, of course, we can say that your initial method would be different than your initial method would not be as impromptu as other ideas.
I sort of dodged the early question that you asked me, what's up my sleeve? Before I talked about the past instead of the future, which is a scene for a mentalist.
Well, you're in the future. You're 13 hours ahead of me.
I am. So the plan right now is to go back to writing, because I've been upgrading Pi, as we discussed. And I released a trilogy over the course of 6 years in the past about mentalism, again, inspired by movies and literature and video games and stuff like this, and my interests. And I realized I still have a lot of ideas to share. So I'm thinking I should go back to the drawing board. And one of the book of the next trilogy will include the upgraded of the wine version, because I thought about this a lot. Again, it's a trick that I've been carrying with me for more than 10 years. And so when I was in the US, actually with you in Long Island, I realized asking for a wine glass in the US can be an obstacle course, because it's not so much. I go in France, anywhere as anybody has that. And not judging, is just a cultural thing, right?
You can ask a 4-year-old, let me borrow your wine glass. Yeah.
Exactly. So in Kuala Lumpur right now, it's a majority Muslim country. So of course, if I ask for a wine glass, it's going to be less common than it would be in France. And in the US, you're more into beers or different drinks and stuff like this, which is fine, like in Germany. But the nice part is, in the next version that I will release in the book, there will be upgraded variants for beer, coffee, tea, because you can do this with any beverage.
Sure. Well, definitely it's not. That's not as elegant as doing it with wine.
No, but maybe for you, because
Well, we
just
have
side
beer
noting.
tasting. We have beer tastings, I guess.
Totally, totally. But for haiku, for example, I've been to Japan. I'm going back again in 2 days. I've been brought up with Japanese culture because of French TV. Had some kind of agreement on that at the time. And so for me, talking about Japan and performing a Japanese or Japan-related effect sort of makes sense. And when I talk about haiku, I can talk about haikus for 2 hours without saying anything stupid. So when I'm doing a 5-minute tricks, it looks like I know my subject. But I had a few people for pi, for haiku, for theme-specific effects that were performing it without selling it properly within their own persona.
Right.
And so you have two solutions. You don't do the effect because it's not suited for you or suited for you, or you shift the theme or the object and suddenly it becomes perfect for you. Hence, coffee, tea, soda, beer, whatever. Dennis Baer would never do a wine demonstration. He would do a beer demonstration of
Sure.
any kind. But, yeah.
Well, that's just because he's German.
Exactly. And also he drinks beer doing card tricks and shows. I don't know how he's doing this, but
because he's German. So, by the way, I think you should definitely copyright the phrase "wine muggle" because that's the first time I've ever heard it. Maybe that should be the title of your book. But
muggle is a funny word.
I love that. So when I was a wine muggle, that's fantastic. So can we talk a little bit more? Maybe not that you need to perform for us, but that's also a beautiful routine that I also have haiku as well. I keep looking this way because I had both pi and haiku on this shelf, and I don't see them. So, but I recently moved. I moved at Thanksgiving, so everything's all over the place. But because they're smaller books, this shelf contained a lot of my smaller books and notebooks. And I must have placed them somewhere else because I'm not seeing them. But I also had haiku. I've never performed it. I've never performed it,
and I want to. This is a regular size, but haiku, I think, is maybe half of it. It's like a small. It's actually an object I will find again in Japan, and that you can find in Japan. You have sort of a vertical page with a hole at the top, and then you have a ring to bind everything together, and you have about 50, 100 pages. And they use this as a note-taking device in Japan. That's very common. You can find this in stationery shops everywhere. And they also use it for flashcards because you can unhook the page and use it as a flashcard for a memory training. That's how I learned my vocabulary when I was learning Korean and other languages. So it's an actual object that exists within their, again, going back to objects that exist for them. And so you do guessing or divination routine with poetry that's written on these pages. And again, I was really into Japan, and I hated the idea of a book test because if you do a book test, I feel like a lot of people go away from the demonstration thinking, how did he do it? Instead of, oh, it moved me so much, which is again going back to the full us thing and moving and entertaining. If you do some research on book tests and how it started, or what's the earliest form of book test we can find in literature, I think Gypsier, is that how you pronounce this in English? You know, the Kalush magazine about history of magic. I'm sorry I can't pronounce this properly in English.
I'm not even sure.
Gypsier. How would you pronounce this if you're American?
I
have no idea, but
that sounds like you're describing. Are you talking about the pouch for cups and balls? No.
Yes, that's the title of a history.
Yeah. Actually, the joke is, I believe we say it the same way because I just recently saw, I think that was the show I saw in DC where Alex was performing her cups and balls routine and said, did the joke? How do you say it? Say it again. I
can't say in English.
Well, it doesn't. That's the joke, is that it doesn't matter. But no, but I can't say this. Gibissier. She says, this is my gibissier, which is French for gibissier. So because I don't think we have a word for it. So we just say
you have a lot of these in American because you borrowed, hence the borrowed word term, a lot of vocabulary from us.
I think we borrowed everything.
So going back to,
we borrowed everything here. Yeah.
You're renting basically.
Yeah.
But yes. So for the book test, they did some research on that. And what's fascinating was the earliest form of book test we found. I mean, not we, because I didn't do it, but they found was guessing verses from Virgil. Do you say this in English? Virgil?
Yes.
The author from like an old time, because I don't know my history. And so you have to think about this and realize, wait a minute, the first form of that classic effect we had was poetry, which in itself is, by definition, poetic, therefore emotional. And then we move to please cast 2 dice so we can pick a page and then you go to that line and I think of a long word and that's going to be amazing. Yeah, it's going to be amazing, but it's not going to be moving because there is no musicality, no poetry to what you're guessing. So that's why I created haiku, because I wanted to divine content that was in itself moving to the spectator, because I asked them to pick something that's resonating with them. And then pi I invented because I wanted to do a more funny, crazy, memory-based routine. And then I went back to the classic book test and I created Babel, which is like a classic book test, and you guess words in a book. But haiku was interesting for that because you sort of touch the spectator more than you fool them. You do fool them, but you touch them also.
And it uses poetry and art as well, because you, at least the version
Yes.
I saw, you have them draw a picture
Mm-hmm.
to draw, to describe what they're looking at. What
they think of a page and they try to picture whatever it is that they have on the page, and I try to reproduce their mind using like a piece of I think you say, what's the carbon, the black stuff, charcoal,
charcoal,
yes.
like a charcoal drawing.
And I do a drawing like that, and then I show them, and what I draw was actually what they had in their mind, and that's the reveal at the end. Yeah. So there is a visual artistic element during the revelation. So.
But that's not the first thing I saw you perform. The first thing I ever saw you perform was when you shuffled 2 decks together and then spread them out and memorized 2 decks of cards.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, that was 4F 2011, and that's the first thing that I performed at 4F. That's me doing it 10 years ago.
Is that Paul Gertner?
So much slimmer. That's Paul Gertner.
Yeah, nice.
Because I think I asked Raj Maddock and a few other guys, okay, I need to pick someone from the first row. And Boris told the story and other people, and you lived through that story too. When it's your first year at 4F, you show up on stage, you know when you're going to be asked to perform, so you show up. And then you look around you, and I'm going to try to stay polite for the image, but you saw your paints, because it's very impressive to have the Hall of Fame in front of you.
Yeah.
You have Paul Gertner, you have Bebel, and even you go back in the days, they had like crazy people like Jennings and so on. So it's very impressive. And I asked a few guys around me, I need to pick someone that's going to come quickly to the stage. So first row, who should I pick? And they said Paul. Everybody said Paul. Not that the others were dangerous, but they said Paul is going to be the nicest. He was super young when he did 4F the first time. He's going to understand your situation. He's going to be so nice.
Oh, yeah, he's a super nice guy.
He was actually so nice that he almost destroyed my routine.
Oh.
Because there is a moment in the routine when I do a mistake on purpose.
Okay.
So he can catch me and I can double catch him. And that's the funny part of that part of the routine. He was so nice. He didn't say anything when I did my mistake on purpose. So I was like, that flies? Okay, we'll keep going. So yeah, he didn't stop me.
It is extremely intimidating. I'm glad you talked about that, because you don't realize really until you get there that you are directly in front of you in the front row are basically, like you said, a hall of fame of magic. Some of the world's greatest sleight of hand artists.
Everybody
and Dan Garrett
book that you read in your life is in front of you.
And Dan Garrett.
That's insane. And Dan Garrett.
So you've got all these amazing magicians and Dan Garrett.
Which is not sleeping.
I find a way to bring up Dan Garrett's name in every one of my 4F acts, and somehow work him into the comedy of I don't know why, I don't know how that started, but somehow so if he sees this later, he'll appreciate it. And those guys you're talking about, guys that had influenced me unknowingly via videotape.
Yes. Exactly.
Early on, and then went from a plastic VHS tape from influencing my life that way to influencing my life in person by being not only just such mentors in magic, but also just great human beings that were so just have encouraged me. And I mean,
Yeah.
Paul, I don't remember where, but Paul Gertner drove me like 5 hours one time to get me to the airport or something. Like I got to ride with Paul Gertner in the car, and I remember at the time thinking, I need to ask better questions. I need to ask more sophisticated. I have 5 hours in a car with Paul Gertner. Why can I not think of anything to say right now? Ask him brilliant questions. You're with a brilliant mind. And it was like, it was the pressure. I'm just like small talking. And I'm like, enough small talk. Ask him something brilliant. I'm sure he expects you to ask a brilliant question. I could think of nothing. Like my mind's completely blank. So you like cards? You know, like,
Does it work with the blue deck also? Yeah.
right. Can you do the same thing with a blue deck? Yeah.
That it was a surreal experience. And we lived that together. And I think that's sort of what made us friends in the first place also, because we arrived, we had done stuff on our side, but when you arrive in that arena, it's very, very scary, at least if you respect the people in front of you anyway. And I remember I met Simon Aronson, I think the first or the second year. And of course, he's a hero of mine because I read him in French and in English, and I had my own stack, and I had so many questions, and I wanted to show him pi and stuff like this. He was the sweetest guy ever. And he defined the field of stack magic in the US for like decades. And you meet him, he's just having dinner, and you have this nice conversation. Sweetest guy. Paul was the same. Raj Maddock fried my brain on the first night when we did the session. He did a book test to me without a book test. And I almost cried because it was insane. The bubble of mystery that he was able to create around him. And he's very good at this, creating a sense of mystery while he's performing.
We were
and so many others that I'm forgetting, but yes.
We were noobs. We were noobs together. That's
Yes.
the term we
And
use.
I don't know how
It's
you
a video
felt
game
about this,
term, but
because when I went back home, so it's like 3 days or 4 days for F. I don't remember the first time. Was 3 days or 4
you know, that confused me too, because I thought it was 3 days, but maybe now it seems it is four. Like I'm this next 4F. I am emceeing the first show, which is on the Wednesday night. So it's actually Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it's
spilling over Wednesday and Sunday.
yeah, which I thought Wednesday used to just be this extra day that people would show up early and go to the steakhouse. But now there's a show Wednesday night. So I guess 3.5 days, I guess, because I don't think Wednesday's not a full day, but I guess it officially begins now Wednesday evening and goes all the way through Saturday. And then of course Monty is the very next day. Monty's on the Sunday.
The follow-up.
But yeah,
it's very, very impressive because you think, oh, I've been invited to 4F. I made it. I'm great now. I'm part of the group. And then you arrive.
And then you have to
spend
perform
3 days with them. And as per 4F rule, you have to perform the first 3 times you attend because you need to have enough material to actually be there. And so I did Rain Man, my routine that we discussed before with the 2 shuffle decks and Paul. And I did that. And I thought, wow, I did Rain Man. I didn't screw up. I didn't have any problem. They seemed to like it. I had good feedback. And then I saw others perform their A material. And it was their 20th year at 4F. And I went back home and I thought, I'm 10% maximum. I need to improve so much. These guys are insane. Some of them, they are here for their culture. Some of them for their gaffing abilities. Some of them because they are amazing slide artists. Some of them because they're great mentalists, like Christian Painter, who is a great mentalist from Indianapolis, sorry. And so you go back home. You thought you would go back home as a victory, and you go back home humbled. You're like, okay, I need to work more.
Very humbling. Were you, obviously we were both nervous, but were your hands physically shaking?
Yes. And Boris told me when they did FISM, when he won in 96, was it, or something like this? Something that they didn't anticipate while he was working on stage to perform his act in front of the jury at FISM was that his knees would bend the wrong way because of stress. Your body is so affected by the mental stress that it starts to do crazy stuff. And for Boris, it was the knees. For me, it was the hands. And Rain Man, despite looking like a mentalism / memory routine, actually has some sleight of hand element to it in some areas that you can't see. and you can't miss these. And they are in the flow of a 12-minute routine when you need to attend to patter and spectator management and the audience and everything. And so, yeah, it was like a black screen. I remember the performance after. While you're doing it, you're completely lost.
I cannot remember a time before then experiencing that level of nervousness, because not only were my hands wouldn't stop shaking, but my palms became so sweaty.
For
And
you, it's relevant.
I
For
was
me,
grabbing
maybe I can
paper
manage
towels.
better.
I remember, yeah, wow, and I was doing that very sleight of hand heavy,
Yes.
the Fizamac with the fork, and I was grabbing napkins and constantly just putting napkins on my hands and going, why is this happening? It was just so strange, such a strange sensation to have it. Never remember having that happen before, of the hands shaking and sweating at the same time, and wondering, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to do this? Because I've never performed in this way before physically, and just like grabbing every napkin. It was insane. I'm like just balling up napkins everywhere. People probably thought I had the flu or something. And just trying to control
COVID,
it.
10 years before.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
started COVID. I started COVID in Batavia. That was nuts. So here's something interesting that we always think as magicians we know so much, and we even if we don't know, we know kind of situation. But when I watched you do, I guess that's what you call the Rain Man routine, is the memorized
It's
deck.
inspired
So
by the movie again a movie. In the movie, he remembers 6 decks playing blackjack with Dustin Hoffman and what's his name? Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise, of course.
I think his name's Tom Cruise.
Yes.
And he drops the matches on the floor, and he knows exactly how many matches. Well, I saw you do it, and then we were in Montreal. I'll never forget this, because I obviously had no clue. I thought you really somehow, like, that there was a trick to it, but the trick was that you somehow are really memorizing, because I asked you, we were trying to find my friend's house, and I asked you what the address was, because she had told us the address, and I said, "What was the address again?" You said, "I don't remember," and I was like, "It's 4 numbers. You don't remember?" And you're like, "No, I don't remember."
That's the proof. That's the proof that I'm faking.
I'm like, "You memorized 106 cards. I saw you do it," and you're like, "Okay, so I'm fake." And I was like, "What?"
I had to confess.
You had to confess. Up until that point, I didn't know. I was just like, you had me completely
really
sold
crazy.
that you can memorize that much stuff, and I'm like, you can't handle 4 numbers. It was just, I need
have
to
a
know
pretty
her
good
address.
memory, but not to that extent. No, unfortunately. But yeah, with Pi and with this routine and other stuff that I do to some extent, I try. There is a great routine by Pete Hartling about memorizing a full deck in his book Card Fictions. Would be funny if I didn't remember the title of the book right now, but Card Fictions. And so the routine is great. And as a comedy device, he's using a glass of orange juice that he says is vitamin for his brain. And the more he drinks, the more his memory improves, which is a great device for comedy.
That's fantastic.
And I looked at the routine, and we have nothing in common in terms of methodology or progression of the routine or anything. But I thought, that's great. Again, going back to style, that's not my style. I want to do a routine that if I went to a science university, they would hire me to study my brain, because it would be so believable that people will think, we need to study this guy because that's crazy what he's doing right now. And Pi is the same, and other things that I do are the same, that I try to make it believable. And some others are obviously not believable, like haiku is definitely fake because you can't draw what's in the people's brain. But Pi and Rain Man can pass as, okay, he's doing it for real. And originally, the inspiration for Rain Man as a method and an effect was the Mo mover card. Maybe you heard of that classic name. It's like the Ace Assembly or Matrix, and you have Mo mover card. And Mo is the name of a guy who used to own a shop somewhere in the US. I forgot where. And there is a book by Jeff Busby, I think, written on that guy. And he was doing the same effect without method. He was doing it for real because he had the ability mentally to keep stock of his shop in his brain and to do the card stuff almost just relying on his memory. So some people can do it. So you just push it a bit further.
Well,
The world
and
champion,
that's
Dominic
what
Bryan, can do 40 decks. So
that's what made your routine believable, is because this is a skill. It's not, you're not levitating a table and we're going, that's impossible. You're doing something that
yeah.
we know that there is a skill called memorization.
Mhm.
And so it becomes very believable that you have trained yourself to do this, which is why I was sold, which is why I totally fell for it.
Yeah.
But I also believe, can you do you do an improvised memorized deck at all? I don't know if I've ever asked you that. I just assumed that maybe you can, but
I
have you
can make it look like it's improvised,
okay,
but I
okay.
don't improvise a lot. I mean, I
Uh
improvise in the sense of jazz. Like I rehearse a lot of stuff and I
sure.
pull out what I need when I need to, but I don't really go in the dark without any knives. I have stuff ready.
It's perfect that you said jazz, because that's what I call my routine, where I pretend to memorize the cards. Is I call it jazz cards. And what
Mm,
I tell the crowd, I'm inspired by the New Orleans music and the fact that jazz musicians can just get on stage and
perfect fit for
jam,
you.
because they know their instruments so well, and it makes it. In fact, it's so believable what I've done. Oh, you were with me in Bristol when I did that on stage. I did my
In
jazz cards
Bristol?
routine. Bristol,
No,
England.
I did Bristol.
No, we were
Wait, you were
together.
here
We lectured
with Joe
together.
Berry?
We were both in Bristol together. Bristol, England.
I'm the memory guy. I should know.
I know, right? No, I know
There
that I
probably
know
is a
for
photo
sure.
somewhere on my phone that's proving that. So yes,
I'll find the photos to
I'll
prove
believe
you.
you. I believe you. No, I believe you.
Yeah, we were both
I'm old.
booked.
I'm old now. I'm forgetting stuff.
And Doc Easton was there,
Oh yes. Oh, then yes. Him
and
and Joe Barry, who also fried me. Yeah, yeah.
he said to me, he said, this is what he said. This is what I'll never forget. He said, if that was a non-gimmick deck of cards, then you fooled me,
Hmm.
because it appeared I was doing exactly what I said I was doing, and that is, it appeared I was memorizing a deck on stage, and finding the cards that quickly, when it's all just jazzing up sleight of hand. It's just improv magic, basically, of me not looking for the cards and cutting to the cards and finding the cards, and
Yeah.
doing it in interesting ways, but after it's been shuffled, and so he basically fell for it the same way that I fell for your Rain Man routine, thinking, well, this is a skill. So he says he has this skill, and he's impressing us with the skill, when in matter of fact, that's not the skill that's being used at all.
Well, something similar happened to me in 2012 when I did Blackpool, not the Blackpool convention, but the Blackpool FISM. And Michael Weber was hired to do a lecture. And a lot of stuff happened with Weber that was amazing. I learned so much over the course of 3 days. But one thing that he did to me unknowingly is that I was at the first row of his lecture, the first time he was lecturing there. And I was scheduled to do my Rainman act as a competitor in the FISM competition like 3 days later. So I was already nervous about this, and it was the main thing on my mind. I look at the Weber lecture, first row. He picks me randomly from the first row to be the spectator for the first routine. And his first routine is to take a deck, dribble it chaotically on the table. So it's obviously shuffled. He does a wash, gathers everything together, and then proceeds to do the most fooling memory demonstration I ever saw in my life with a deck. That's obviously regular deck, and that's obviously shuffled. And I'm like in my head, he did a miracle to me. That's way better than what I'm supposed to do 3 days later for the competition. I'm gonna die. This is the end. So yeah,
But did
that
you
didn't
do
boost
it?
my confidence.
But you did the competition.
I did a competition.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't even realize. I
In
didn't remember that
2012.
you had done FISM.
Yeah, I did it the same year as Simon Cornell, who won the creativity prize, I think.
So that was
In
before it. So I was in Remini. So that was the FISM before Remini, or FISM after?
I
That was
think
before.
so. Or
Yeah, because then
they
Korea
didn't have
was
a one in Korea. Yeah, yeah, there was
Korea
a Korea
was
one too.
after Remini. Yeah. So okay.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
So
I
it
did
was,
Blackpool, and I was in a category, I think that's called parlor magic,
oh yeah, that was my
which is a
category
bit,
too.
which is a bit weird for me because it's a mental routine, hence the
Yeah.
URL on my head, but it's not a mentalism routine, it's a memory routine. Even
Oh,
in
okay.
France, I had this problem.
Oh.
I only picked the mentalism category in France when I did the national championship because they told me in the mentalism category you have 12 minutes, and in the card magic you have 8. and my routine was 10. So I took the category that allowed me the most time to perform.
I did
So
not realize
and
that the time was different. Wait, is it?
for France,
Oh,
for
not
the
okay.
French competition, the national competition in
That's
France. So
strange.
in 2008, they put me in the mentalism category, which I was fine with,
Incredible.
and I won the first prize for that. And I had the time to do it perfectly because of the more time that they allowed for mentalism, I guess. But then when I performed at FISM in 2012 at Blackpool, I was put in the parlor magic category because France has a system, and all the other countries, I believe, are the same, where they can only allow that many performers in each category. That they can only propose 2 mentalists or 1 mentalist, for in the case of France, and 2 stage and 2 kids and stuff like this. So we already had one guy for mentalism who didn't win, and they put me by default in the parlor category, the same category as Jan Frisch after he won every single competition for the last 5 years. So when you're in the same category as Jan Frisch on the year he's attempting World Championship, the most you can do is second. That's the most you can do.
Yeah, right.
And I did second, but I did my part, and I won't name names. It's just for fun. I'll say that. Don't do that if you do a competition. Some performers asked to be removed from that category when they learned that Jan Frisch was in it. They asked, can we compete in another category because there is no way we're going to win.
Wow.
That's a bit surprising, but I won't name names.
And then he had already won the year he came back and competed the year I competed, and actually they moved him to my category. I was in 2. I was in parlor, and then I was in parlor and then comedy magic for stage. And I don't know what category he was originally in, but they moved him to comedy magic. They decided, and I was like, why you keep moving people around, and why are you doing this to me? Yeah. And then they ended up giving him an honorary award. So I forget, in the end they didn't even keep him in that category. I think they moved it again, or they ended up giving him an honorary award.
You did the same to me, though. You did the same trick to me when we went to Canada for the CAM convention. I forgot the year, like 7 years ago, and we both competed. I did close up, and you did close up, and you also did parlor or stage. I don't remember, and you won both. So to avoid me crying all the way back to France, they gave me like a small prize. Say, we give you award of merit.
I didn't remember that.
Dardon in front of you. So yeah.
I didn't remember that. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sean
wow.
Farquhar gave me the thing at the end. Said, here you go. So you're not left empty-handed because of Michael.
Sorry about that, Vincent. Here you go. We have a special prize for you. Good luck.
Exactly that tone. But yeah, you were not happy with just winning one category. You had to win 2 at the same time.
Yeah, that does sound like me.
You and Mark de Souza tend to do this. It's very annoying for the other guys.
My I'm not doing that anymore. Well, were you there in Quebec the year that this was not CAM, but Quebec when I went, I was in 5 categories. No, that was my first year.
No.
You weren't. I'm never doing that again. And that was why I brought 2 acts to FISM, which also I believe was kind of a mistake because it's too stressful. It's too stressful, and I wasn't able to enjoy the rest of FISM worrying about 2 different acts to compete with. And in Quebec, the first year that I did the Festival de Magie, I asked them, I said, is there a rule about competing in more than one category? And they said, you can compete in as many categories as you want. So in my mind, I'm like, it's a numbers game.
To say to you.
I figure you better your chances of coming home with an award if the more categories you're in. So I did them all. I said, I'm going to put an act, and I did 5 different acts in 5 different categories.
How many did you win? How many did you win?
2 of them. I won.
2 out of 5?
Yeah, 2 out of 5. I did take first in 2 out of 5. I didn't win the Grand Prix that year. I had to go back the next year to win the whole thing because Mark won it. Which, I mean, he had an amazing act. It was beautiful. I knew for sure it was going to win. It was just perfect for that. But
I don't know how you feel about this because you're a professional performer for a real situation. And for me, at the time when I came up with the routine and I decided to do the French Championship and then the World Championship, I was not a pro. I was not a professional performer as I was after. And so having the competition, first the date in France and then for F and then the FISM, was sort of a deadline that pushed me to work harder, because I had a routine that I was happy with. But when you know you're going to be in the world competition or a national competition or even at 4F, you think it cannot be just a routine I'm happy with. It needs to be crazy. It needs to be amazing as much as it can be. And so it really pushed me to work more than I would have if I just had come up with a trick to entertain my friends. So I don't know how you felt with the balance of, I'm a pro performer. This is a routine that I actually perform for real people, but also I want to bring it to FISM, to 4F, to the Canadian competition.
Well, that's actually one of the things I've been kind of conflicted about, and going forward, I I have a box over here that I don't want to move the camera. So I have my, I moved and I haven't set everything back up. So all of my awards and trophies are in these 4 boxes over here. And I'm mad at my past self because my past self is being like challenging and condescending to my future self. And so my present self is like annoyed because it says trophies, very fragile, but no FISM, WTF. And I don't even remember writing that, but it's like my past self challenging me to go like, "What's up, man? Why don't you have a FISM trophy in there?" And I'm like, "Great, now I gotta focus again and come up with an act because I don't have a new act for FISM." But one of the things I've been conflicted about is the fact that, as you know, by seeing what the fork routine, that is not a practical act. It is not practical in the regular world. It was definitely written for magicians, performed for magicians, meant to do for magic competitions.
You're incorporating elements that are coming from your Muggle routine still.
Yes, and many of those elements are still prevalent in my professional routines. But as far as perfecting that 10 minutes and the amount of time and effort spent, I have felt and suggested to others that develop an act that you're going to use not just for competitions, and then it's much more worthwhile if you can make use of that act in the real world, for 2 reasons.
And easier to rehearse too.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, the other reason is...
Sorry. I'm a mentalist. I read your mind. I'm sorry.
Exactly. No, that's exactly the point, is that if you can take that act and put it in the real world, then A, you have something that is useful, and B, you have something that you can find means of rehearsing, because it is difficult. Like, did we go through? Oh, we went through 40 minutes again. Oh no. No, Vincent, come back. Wait, no. All right. We'll have to wrap it up. I've kept him long enough, and I'm sure he's getting tired. It's like he's 13 hours ahead of me. It's past his bedtime. So hold on. We weren't watching the time that time, so he'll have to give me a new link. We'll start another link. So we went through we're using the poor man's Zoom, and we went through now we've done a long show. So I'm gonna have to figure out how we're gonna edit this when we use it for something up my sleeve, because that's 2 40-minute segments already. So you get 40 minutes free on Zoom. For those maybe just tuning in, I had to get my guest to start the Zoom call because I couldn't figure it out. I figured out StreamYard. I've been using StreamYard. I'm using OBS. I mean, like, this is some tech savvy stuff for this guy right here. Those of you that know me know I am not tech savvy by any means. I don't know all the acronyms and what they stand for. So let's see if here we go. He's sending me another one. So new link above. Okay, got it. Perfect. We're going to launch another session. There it is. Join with audio. Yay!
Of the cut, completely accidental.
Yeah, we weren't watching the time on that one, but I explained it. That means that I've kept you for a while, because that's 2 40-minute segments that we've gone through. So I'm sure you'll have to get to bed soon. I have basically one more question I wanted to go over with you, but so before I ask you that, which actually could be a whole nother 40 minutes.
3 questions today, 3 questions, and we did 2 times 40 minutes. We should have a couple of hours in front of us.
I want to show you. Look, so
Sure.
here is okay. So I interviewed Eric Jones recently. Those are my notes for what I want to ask. And then after that, last night I interviewed Doug Kahn. Notes that, and I know, and not like I needed that at all. There's a million things I could ask Eric. There's a Doug I know personally that we live 15 minutes from each other. But here I wanted to show you what I wrote down for you. Because it's been 5 years since I've gotten to hang out with you. You and I could talk for days. I took my pen and I was going to start writing, and I went, it's Vincent. I don't need notes. I don't need to write anything down. I know that
you saw me. I talk too much with a French accent. I'm doubly annoying. So yeah.
I knew we could cover 20 minutes, and we've now done 80 minutes. No problem. So I figured all I have to do is if I can start the call, if I can start this properly, then we're fine, and we could just run with it. Yeah, because I know there's a million questions I could ask you. So really, I have one more thing that I want to discuss, and that discussion could easily be another 40 minutes. But was there anything more? Because you did send me some media. Was there anything we didn't go over that you wanted to talk about or cover before I ask you my final question?
I don't know when this is going to be broadcasted and on what platform and how many and what's the demographic of people watching this.
Okay.
But since we touched on the subject a few times during the discussion, I wanted to sort of give a gift of sorts to your audience.
Oh.
So if they go to my website, because we talked about creating and performing and what's the inspiration and how we put all this together and touching the audience instead of just fooling them. And I've been referencing movies. I think during COVID, one thing that I realized is I had a lot of time on my hands. So I started to film videos about the movies that I had been watching or that I would watch, and books and so on. And these became sort of vlogs on my website that are completely free. So I gain nothing from sharing the content of 10 books for free with everyone. But if you go on my website, the link is here. There is a blog section somewhere, and you'll find more than 100 videos in English. It's basically the same background and the same format. And I'm talking about movies, and I'm trying to push you to watch movies that you might have not seen before. Okay. Like to give one example, this is Zatoichi, a character played by Shintaro Katsu. He's a Japanese actor who died in the late 80s. And he played the same character in 26 movies, 200 TV episodes. And they did a play, and they did a novel, and they did a manga, like a Japanese comic book and so on. And you see him age through the movies. He went from black and white to color, and he was very sick on this one, the last one. And the movie is about a blind guy who is also a sword artist and a masseur. So there is a lot of accidental magic material in these movies, plural. So if you watch these movies, and you can find them online, it's impossible not to have ideas. But what's interesting is because you're watching black and white Japanese swords movie from the 60s, you will have very original ideas. You won't have an idea for a new Rubik's Cube routine or a new Matrix routine. You will be completely out of your field and out of your comfort zone, and it will inspire you some great stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do with these videos. I'm trying to say, this is a great scene. I don't have a solution. Maybe we could do this. Maybe this could be the effect. And also how the philosophy of the character can inspire us in the way we perform with the audience. That's one source of inspiration that's for free on my website. And the other one is Jorge Luis Borges, who's an Argentinian writer. And again, he wrote like for decades, and he was blind too, because I love blind people. It's like a great subject for magic. And he wrote blind. So because he was blind, he had to come up with his stories in his head. And every day he had a guy coming up to take dictation. So down to the punctuation, this guy had to come up with amazing stories and dictate them the next day to someone who was coming for the session. So already the creating process is insane. But what he wrote about is even more crazy. I did 12 videos on this. He talks about infinity, about magic. He actually has, that's very surprising too, written a detective story in which the solution is a magic trick. He's using the one step ahead principle to solve the mystery. It's very unusual, and it pushes me to think that he must have talked to a magician at that time to have that idea, because it's too perfectly magical to be coming up from the brain of someone who never performed magic before.
Now, he was blind in
yeah.
real life. The Japanese actor was playing a blind man, or was he actually blind?
He was playing a blind man, yes.
Okay. So he wasn't
But
he
was
wasn't
not,
actually
no, he was.
okay.
He did other series and other
Okay.
acting stuff, and he was a great guy, great actor.
And yeah, I'll be able to
Yeah.
post in conjunction with when we broadcast it, I'll be able to post the links as well and share
Yeah, they
those.
show up on the screen, but you can also put them on the description text box.
Yeah, we'll put the links in chat when we air any of the footage. So send me those, and also I'm very interested to watch the movie you talked about the wine the wine tasting,
Yes.
the one that inspired
I'll
you for
send
that
you
effect.
in the text box. I'll send you the proper title in French and in English. It might be difficult to find with English subtitles, though. It's very easy for us to find American movies in French subtitles, but to find French movies in English subtitles sometimes.
Je parle français. C'est
Allez,
pas
oui,
grave.
mais on continue en français pendant toute la soirée.
Bon, on continue, c'est bien, oui. Oh, well, and speaking of, I was going to say, I don't know if any of my viewers speak French. Hello, Girly Kegs. Girly Kegs, vous parlez français aussi? No? Canadien? She speaks Canadian. But I was
doesn't count.
This isn't my final question, but I meant to ask you as well because our first viewer, my friend Krindash, has a fascination with Japanese culture. Well, let's say he has a fascination with sake. And sushi, as do I. But you have not just Japanese, but you've been fascinated for years. I've known you fascinated with Asian culture, and why is that, or what kind of kicked that off? You're still, well, you're in Malaysia now. You're still fascinated.
I think it's. I try to make it short. It's going to be very. Let's make it 30 minutes.
Two more Zoom calls.
So,
we have two more
exactly,
Zoom calls.
Because you're basically asking for my biography here. So what happened in the early? I was born in '83, so I'm turning 40 this year. I was born in '83, and so I was watching TV as a kid in the late '80s to mid '90s, I would say. And in that time on TV, we only have in France maybe 3 channels, and the first one, I think, had a TV show for kids when you come out of school. Perfect timing. They go on air. And they had a deal with Japan somehow. You have to think, a deal with French TV in the late 80s. It's crazy to broadcast. What's the name that you would know? Dragon Ball Z, like the classic Goldorak. I know the name in French, so it's very confusing for me to try to communicate them in English. But
Power Rangers, go Power Rangers.
That too. I was a bit too young for that. That was the previous generation. But
everybody's too young for that.
So for like 10, 15 years, French youth was inundated by Japanese media, dubbed in French, of course, because at that age it's hard to manage subtitles. And so I think it played a big part in influencing me, because I'm not the only one who, when we grew up, wanted to learn Japanese, wanted to go to Japan, ended up liking Asian food, Asian music, Asian cinema, which is great, and so on and so on.
Now I kind of want to see. I want to see Dragon Ball Z dubbed in French now. That sounds hilarious.
I mean, for me, it's nostalgic, so probably good, but maybe for you, it's disgusting. I don't know. Japanese, I mean, of course, is better.
It was already weird because you can so tell that even that a cartoon is being dubbed. You know,
yes,
you could so tell that this is not their voices. This is not what they're saying.
It's not intended to be that way. The
right.
intention is not the same.
It always looks so
when
strange.
I grew up, I grew up with this, like Japanese media designed for kids. And then I grew up and I sort of fell out of it. And years later, when I was, I think, 19, I ended up not being able to sleep during June 20 years ago. And I ended up on a weird channel. And lucky for me, it was the beginning of a movie that I never heard of, which is called The Grave of the Fireflies, which is the title of the Japanese movie. It's an animation movie, so it's not an episode for kids. It's an actual movie for adults, because the theme is the World War II and 2 kids trying to survive that in the countryside of Japan. And it's a devastating movie because it's taken from a real story from the guy in the movie. So it's animated. And I'm watching this because I recognize the style of the drawing from when I was a kid. So I'm attracted to it. I'm like, oh, I watch this. I recognize the style. Let's watch this. And it broke me so hard because the story is, do you say heart-wrenching in English?
Yeah.
It's
I think we
devastating.
say gut wrenching, but same.
Gut-wrenching,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah. I was completely broken by this. I didn't sleep all night. And in my mind, I thought, if I cannot if I cannot approach that with magic, there is no point. Just stop. Because you have to think that animation, Japanese animation, is very, very young. It's much younger than magic. We have been around for more than 5,000 years, historically speaking. And so Japanese animation is old, but not that old.
Right.
It's maybe 100 years or something like this. And within that time frame, it was able to transcend its stigma of being just for kids, very much like magic is, just for kids,
Sure.
and go to heights that we as magicians never reached. So it was fascinating to me. I thought, wait, they did it in 100 years. We've been at it for 5,000 years. And when you say you're a magician, people still ask, oh, you do kids' birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I was like, I need to break that. I need to go beyond that. And that was the seed of the show that I did for 2 years in a theater in Paris, 15 years later, when I talked about Hiroshima and magic and linking everything together. And so that's the inspiration that I don't know how, but very early on, and then at very specific points in my life, I encountered Japanese culture in one way or another. It always spoke to me. And I watch American movies, and I watch Italian movies, and I watch German movies, and it never touched me the same. Like Japanese as something that's very special to me. But I know it doesn't speak to everyone. Some people are touched by Italian cinema or not cinema, but video games or literature or anything else, music. But for me, it was Japanese cinema specifically that really shaped the way I dress, the way I behave with my audience, the way I perform my magic, the intention behind it. So yeah.
What you're saying is absolutely beautiful and meaningful, and I don't want to take away from that, but you need to know inside
But you have a joke.
well, I'm laughing a lot on the inside because all of a sudden I was trying to picture you doing a kid's birthday party.
I did actually in my time.
No, really?
I did it enough that I realized I hated kids. So I stopped doing it.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember you saying that that you hate kids.
Yeah.
And well, wait.
But
Okay,
to be
I
fair,
got
I
what.
understand that kids are a very specific audience, and I'm not cut out for it. So
What would you do?
great
What did you
people
do at a
that.
kid's birthday? Like I
I
can't
was
picture
so
you doing any
young
of
that
your stuff.
I was not a master of my repertoire at the
Did you
time.
do
I was just performing
SpongeBob?
whatever I bought in a catalog. Probably SpongeBob,
You
which
did
was
a SpongeBob
the
routine?
most shameful moment in my personal history. But
Would
yeah.
you do a SpongeBob trick for us on camera today?
So the advantage of living as a minimalist and having left my country in August is I had to ditch the sponge balls and the trophies also. You
No,
spoke about your box of trophies.
yeah.
Went into the bin for me.
You threw them away?
I had to, the shelves you see behind me
Yeah.
are just an image of what I used to have in my
Okay.
living room.
Right.
That's my actual living room from like 1 year ago. Everything went into the bin except for the magic books that I sold to a crazy guy who wanted to have everything I had. But yeah.
If you could have just
And
you could have sent me the trophies, I could have like scratched your name off and then put mine on.
I think you can see a few pieces. Like these are the trophies here.
Yeah. Oh, I
rest
recognize
in a bin in Paris. That's France. That's Scott Robinson convention. They gave me the MVP because they was too nice. They were too nice. That's the Zatoichi box set in Blu-ray that you can buy on the internet if you want to watch the movie I've been boring you with. That's Borges, Jorge Luis Borges, the books. That's The Grave of the Fireflies. That's the box that I bought in Japan in 2017. And that's the passport I'm currently using to travel everywhere. That's another Japanese stuff.
It is interesting that your life can now exist digitally, and when you think about it, like your trophies are now on a digital picture behind you. Mine are actually sitting in boxes here, and so
that's the difference.
What is exactly the fact that I do have pictures of them, so they do exist digitally, and so like, do I even need to put them on the shelves, or does it suffice that? Well, oh yeah, and some of them are behind me in this picture, so there you go. So I have them digitally here as well. So I mean, do I even need the physical trophy? You know,
I like to think that if you don't have the object, it makes the memory stronger because you don't have the physical tool to recall it. So all the objects behind me and everything that I ditched and all my clothes and all the technology stuff that I had and all the toys and the PlayStation and whatever, if you curate this to the point of having only 2 bags, it really simplifies your thinking and your life in general. Because also, it's like Fight Club. If you've seen the movie, again, going back to movies, I'm sorry, but there is this great line at the beginning where they say, uh, things we own end up owning us.
Hmm.
And I reached that point 1 year ago when I was like, I need a bigger place. For what? To store my shit. That's not a good reason. So I'm going to downsize to 2 bags and not need to pay a bigger rent and travel the world.
You basically have started answering what my last question was, and that is because you're a mentalist and you guessed it. But why did you become a minimalist? I figured that I already call mentalists lazy magicians. Actually, no, mentalists.
I have that a lot. Yes, when I'm lecturing, magicians are very jealous of me because they see me arriving with just a small suitcase, and they have to have a girl, a tiger, and a box. And that's crazy.
Well, that's not actually true. Mentalists still have some props. I call hypnotists lazy magicians.
Yes.
That they were just like, they got tired of carrying stuff, and they were just like, you know what? I'm just gonna pretend to hypnotize drunk people on stage. That's if I don't have to show up with anything. So that's not actually my term for mentalist. But the fact is that already being a mentalist, you're already sort of a minimalist at that. When you choose that category of magic, but then you took it a step further. But not just a minimalist, but a nomad. You said you were going to get into, like, what made you decide that, okay, now I'm going to hit the road, not have a home, start traveling around, and live my life that way? And that I'm very curious about. And also, do you still take pictures of your food?
Less of the food, although I'll start again in 2 days because Japan is a great place for food that looks good on photos. So I'll start again. I struggled with the terms like I do with mentalists because it's a difficult etiquette to define. I talk about this in my book also, and we'll go back to it, I think. But I never liked the term digital nomad, and I never liked the term minimalist, because every time you define, the way it's defined is as weak a definition as magician is in my eyes anyway. So when you say I'm a minimalist, it's like you're trying to prove to the world that you can live with 20 objects, and becomes a quest against object, where the original point was to get rid of that question in the first place. So it feels a bit counterproductive. I guess I'm being, again,
that makes it kind of like, how do you know if someone's a vegan? Because they'll tell you right away.
Exactly. CrossFit is the same. But yeah.
Right.
So minimalist, it's just that I only keep objects that bring me function or pleasure, and nothing else than that. So it's not like a quest, or I'm not a monk or anything. And I had to buy a suitcase in Vietnam because I was starting to spill out of the bags a bit too much. So I had to bring a bigger container. And for digital nomads, it's a bit the same, because usually they are translators, or they are designers, or stuff like this, like stuff you do on the computer. And my work is still about interacting with people and coming up with routines and effects and so on. So I'm location independent, I think is the term. And basically I do what I want, and I let people define what I am. But to go back to mentalism, it's the same, because I told you I went into the mentalist category just because they gave me more time with the memory routine, which is not mentalism, that's memory, that's another category altogether. And so I became a mentalist because of a time constraint, not because of a philosophical belief that I had to dress in black and be very pretentious and speak with a French accent and so on. So it's a weird accident, but I do what I want, and I let people define it. It's like great horror, especially Japanese horror. They don't show you the monster, they let you define it in your mind. And what you imagine is always going to be stronger than what they show you on the screen, which is the big difference between American horror and Japanese horror. So I'm doing the same. I do what I want. I don't do a disclaimer like some mentalists do, for example. But I will refuse illegal offers at the end of the show. Like, I had people coming up to me saying, can you talk to the dead? Can you predict the future? Blah, blah, blah. And you can charge them. But my father brought me up a certain way, so I won't do that. So I don't really have a definition. I just do what I want, and then it ends up being something, and then I'm happy, hopefully.
Excellent. Final question, and then I'm gonna let you go to bed, and we'll get out of here, and then I'll figure out how I'm gonna edit these 3 Zoom calls
Friends.
into the best 25 minutes. When are you coming back to New Orleans?
As soon as I can. So I'm
Okay.
doing Japan for 3 weeks, then Bangkok for 3 months, then Manila for 3 months. So that's taking me to October. Technically, I'm going back to Malaysia after, because these are my top 3 now, top 3 countries. But I guess I could aim for America around 4F 2024,
Okay.
which would coincide with the release of a couple of books that I'm working on. So that could also become a tour, and I could visit you and visit friends in Chicago and so on.
Excellent. So that means if I want to see you sooner than that, then I have to
You have to come.
go see. Yeah, I have to.
It's a 20-hour flight. It's easy for you. From New Orleans, it's easy.
Yeah,
NOLA
yeah.
has an airport, an international airport.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, I've never seen that part of the world. That's been a dream for a long time. So I may
You
have
need to come.
I may have to take you up on that just because two birds.
You'll be more comfortable than me here because I'm traveling and I'm finding a new obstacle that I never had before. I speak English and French, so I can perform in all of these countries and Germany, for example, because they speak perfect English, most of them. But when I was in Vietnam, I was dead because I can't perform to anyone. They don't speak. They speak some English, but not the English that I need for them to follow me on my routines. And Thailand is the same. They speak English for tourists, but not the level that I need for performing. And that's my fault. I should speak Vietnamese. I should speak Thai, and not putting it on them. But if you come to these countries, you're so visual. You should be able to transcend culturally and linguistically.
Gotcha. I was wondering what you meant by that. I was like, I don't speak Vietnamese either. Okay, you mean because my magic is more of a visual. Well, and that's been an interesting challenge. I'll leave you with this. This is a funny thing. I was at a bar in New Orleans. It was a jazz club, and there was this beautiful Japanese girl sitting there. And I walked up to try to talk to her, and realized she didn't speak any English. And here I am trying to communicate, just say, "Oh, how long are you here? Where you're from? Whatever." And my friend Armando sees me struggling trying to talk to this pretty girl, and he walks up to me and hands me a deck of cards. I don't even know why he had a deck of cards, or why, if it was my deck of cards, I don't know. But he just taps me on the shoulder and just goes, "Dude," and just hands me the cards. And I was just like, I nodded, opened up the cards, and just started showing her stuff. It's like, forget the talking, just show her what you could do, because how else you're gonna win her over? And it was just this I'll never forget, because there's this eye-popping moment of like, wow, magic transcends language. It really does, when it can be visual magic. But it's also interesting to think, I had another situation where I was approached at the end of a show by a blind man who came up to me and said, "What magic can you do for me?"
Yeah.
And that's a situation where I believe you would have a great advantage, because mentalism, or a lot of mental effects, transcends the visual art, and you have a much better chance of figuring out how you're going to entertain a blind person with the art of magic than I do.
I never asked this question in that direction, but in the other, what would I do if I was blind? Because again, I'm attracted to blind people with the Japanese character and the Argentinian author we mentioned before.
That's like, it's kind of funny that's your thing. Like, that's a weird kink. Like, hey baby, can you put this blindfold on for me?
It's not a kink. It's the future for me. I'm preparing for the future because genetically speaking, in my family, that's what's waiting for us. Everyone in my family ended up being very, very poor eyesight.
Oh, really?
I used to wear glasses, and I did a laser surgery 6 years ago, I think. So now I can see through walls, which is very convenient. But before that, I was legally blind. And I know I'm going to be blind in 20 years, 25 years or something.
Wow.
So when I did the surgery, I asked the guy, what's the percentage of error that you do? Because it's surgery, it's not magic. You have to fail sometimes. And he said, about 2%. There is 2% chance that you will walk out of the room being blind. 2% is not negligible. You have to think about what's going to happen. It's one chance out of 50. So I thought, what can I do if I'm blind after? And I realized a lot of my material would still fly because Pi, once I have the book, I don't need to look at the book. Haiku is the same. A lot of what I do is not based on me getting input, but on me communicating with the audience. I can do that in
Can
5 minutes.
you play the one video you haven't played you sent me, or I can pull it up, is where
Which was it?
you have a girl covering your eyes as you're dealing the cards.
Oh, yeah, I love this routine actually. I'm going to put my arm away.
Does that
I
have
did that a few
anything to
times.
do with the fact that you believe you might be blind in the future, or is this just a coincidence?
I didn't come up with it for that situation, but yes, when it's very hard because I'm actually blind when I'm performing this. I
Yeah.
really can't see, but it's very hard to convince the audience that I can't see because they are used to us lying all the time. And I found a few tricks to become blind on demand like this, asking for the hand and so on.
This
But
is
yeah, I'm legally blind on this
this
one, like
this
actually
is
blind.
kind of well, and I know only because I know I've seen this routine many times. You
Yeah.
actually, well, you've taught it to me. I
Mm.
have I had that routine for a while. Again,
Yeah.
not one I prefer, which there's really no excuse for me not performing that one. That I could have figured out how to
This one is
adapt.
self-working. So
Well,
for
yeah,
people who don't know what I'm doing here, you can go on my website and type multitude. The link is here and they'll see the
multitude.
demonstration. But very quickly, we shuffle the deck and we've been using the deck for like 10 routines before. So it's shuffled and blah, blah, blah and normal. And then I ask them to pick a spot to start from in the deck. So I dribble, they say stop, and I cut and I start exactly from where they say. They blindfold me with their hand or whatever. I start dealing 4 packets. At any point, I think it will show up right now. They can ask me to shuffle, and I shuffle blind. Here we go. And then I keep on dealing. And at the end, I reveal I have dealt all the hearts, all the clubs, all the diamonds, all the spades separately. And again, it's real shuffles. I'm really blind, and it's basically self-working as a routine. So it's a
And the good
very
thing is
easy effect.
you'll still be able to perform this if you were
Yeah.
actually become blind in real life.
Yeah.
So there you go. You just have to do a longer version. Well, actually, there's several multitude of several routines.
In multitude, you have several routines, and for this specific effect, I have 2 versions. Like this version is the easy one. That's also the finale of the Rain Man routine. And in Rain Man, I'm not using the method from multitude for the dealing of the suits. Maybe I can tell what it is. No, can I? I'll keep it a secret for now. But yeah.
Yeah, actually, I don't know. Keep it a secret because I don't know. That's the one I don't know. I don't believe you ever shared that with
Let's
me. And
preserve the
so,
magic.
yeah, for me, that's still amazing magic because, like we talked about, I fell for it completely. And yeah, total belief. And I'm guessing so did everyone at 4F, but they didn't know either. Yeah,
Some.
magicians are like kids. Well, this has been outstanding. What amazing content. Thank you so much. I knew I was going to have a blast being able to
Thank you
talk
for
to you.
calling me.
It's so great that I get to hang out with you again. I hope to see you for real. Maybe I
I'll see you
can
in
make a
5
trip out
years.
there. Well, hopefully sooner than that. I'll figure out a way to come and find you. That would be amazing. Because yeah, we need to do more things together. I loved when we had the lecture tour together. What great times. I'm going to go through my photographs, but thank you for being part of this. And well, actually,
thank you for the invitation.
it's part of something up my sleeve, but I think we have enough content that it'll be part of other things as well. And I'll send you all the footage. This has been incredible.
Sure.
And also, even though you hate cats, Fitz wants to say goodbye as well. Say bye to Vincent. Say bye.
Meow.
Say bye.
In French, we say meow, not meow.
Oh yeah,
So, meow.
meow, Vincent. And so I will let you go, and then I'm gonna find somebody to raid on the Twitch channel.
Sure.
So I'll be on a couple more minutes, but the Zoom call probably run out anyway. But that was amazing. This has been Vincent Hedan, mentalist, minimalist, although he doesn't like that term, but just an amazing friend that I get to call friend, and I feel honored for that. So thank you for being on my show.
Thank you for your time. See you